Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. We still have a few more people joining us, but we're going to get started to be respectful of everybody's time this morning. Welcome to the Women's Business Council. Happy Friday. For those that don't know me, my name is Jonathan Porges. I'm the market manager for Boynton Beach for the Boca Raton Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us this morning. We have a great program lined up. We were just talking offline, and I got a sneak peek at the slides, so you guys are in for a real treat this morning. All right, so with that, Ross, take us home.
And Catherine is my co-chair in the group here, so that's great. But I'm Roz, and I'm the queen bee here at Everything Logo, helping you be remembered on these great sales and marketing tools called promotional items that help you build relationships and grow your businesses. So I'm just happy to see you all this morning, and thank you for attending, and Michael, you too, that's great. So I want to introduce Andrea because this is really exciting today. So Andrea Hoffer has been in the business of hiring, leading, and motivating people for over 25 years. She's currently the founder and CEO of AHA Recruiting Experts. The core purpose of AHA is to give leaders their time and freedom back by helping them attract, engage, and retain team members who believe in and support their mission. Andrea is a former spa owner where she managed 35 employees, so she knows firsthand the everyday challenges of motivating employees, exceeding customer expectations, and meeting business and revenue goals. She struggled from high turnover and lack of good candidates. So after some long research, much research, and trial and error, she perfected a hiring process that gets results. And she is now sharing that experience and knowledge to help companies to recruit, hire, onboard, and engage their team members. So she talks to business owners and CEOs and organization leaders, and she'll inspire us all to take action with some clear-cut steps that have proven to get results. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Andrea, and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Roz. The way you did that bio was it was so animated. I really appreciate it. Usually it's very flat and
so no, I'm excited.
Thank you. And thank you for having me today. I'm so honored and for so many people showing up, and I appreciate it. And it's really interesting listening to what all of you do, because you're from all different industries and backgrounds. And so I think that just makes the group even more exciting. So the topic today is how to find the perfect employee in 2021. And that is a really big topic, right? There's a lot. I was telling Jonathan earlier, I've done, a few weeks ago, I did a 4-hour workshop on the same topic. So I packed a lot into this. So I may go fairly quickly, but I'm happy to share the slides later if you just want to, zip me an email if you'd like the slides. And I think I even have some handouts for it that I'm happy to share afterwards. But we do have time for questions at the end, so write down your questions, and I'm happy to answer all of them. Let's see, how do I forward here? There we go. So what we're going to review today is discovering who you need, creating an irresistible job posting, conducting effective interviews, and scoring candidate responses. Those are the 4 components that I felt were the most important to really kind of shine a spotlight on. Does that work for everybody? Okay. So the first part is usually the part that employers forget or they don't spend as much time on because it's not, the sexy part. It's not the part where they think they're going to get immediate results, but it's really the most important. And that's discovering who you need and who you are and what you have to offer. So the first part of that is discover the position needs. Really get a good understanding of what skills and experience you truly need for that person. Try not to make a huge laundry list. I see job posting after job posting of these huge laundry lists of this ideal person that's probably never going to exist. So you really want to know, what do you really need? What can you train up on that you're equipped to share the resources to train them up? And what are the basic skills that they need coming in? And what are your nice to haves? The next thing you need to know is, and this is really important, how do your best team members show up? Who are you? Who is your organization on a day-to-day basis? And we're gonna, once I go through these Discover Who slides, we're gonna talk a little bit about how to start figuring these things out. But you already know some of these things. You kind of know who your best team members have been in the past or now. And if you really start to think about it, you can think about how they show up. And these are the behaviors that you want to see in your new hires. What are your core values? What is it that your team lives by every day? They know that this is the most important thing for the organization. So every decision they make is based on those values. So you don't have to be there for every decision and, you know, in every step. How did they work together? How did they communicate? What is it that they do that you say, wow, they really kicked it out of the park? And then what do you have to offer? Why do your team members even like working at your business? Here are some things that people usually put down. You really want to get creative on this, because usually when I say, what do you have to offer? People will start talking about salary, they'll talk about health benefits. And yes, those things are important to a lot of candidates. But a lot of times candidates also want to know that there's a team, even if it's a remote business. How do they work together? Do I have coworkers? Is there flexibility? That is huge. And I mean, it's been getting big for years, but since COVID, flexibility, you know, people want to work from home. They want to work the hours they want to work. You know, they're willing to get it done. They're even sometimes willing to work more hours. They just want to work them at the time that works for them. Are you making an impact on the community? What is your mission? How does that connect to what these people are going to be doing every day? Do you show them appreciation? How do you do that? If you have fun, if you have parties, make sure you're putting that out there on the web, showing people this is how we show up. This is how we come together as a team. This is how we celebrate, because that's what's going to attract good candidates. And of course, they want to know, how can I grow? Will I be able to move up? It's not all about moving up in pay. It's also about professional development and moving up in responsibility. So the more you can have a career ladder built out for them and some milestones that they hit and how to get there and what they'll get for getting there, the more you're going to attract great people. Because the people who want to grow, those are the people that you want on your team. And security is coming up a lot since COVID. You know, people want to know that your company, your organization is not going to cut back, that they're not going to get hired and then something happens and 6 months later they're laid off again. So that's become even more important. We're getting a lot of questions about that as we hire for our clients. And, you know, what are some of the things that the candidate may not find appealing? It's really important as you go into this to know, why am I having challenges, or will I have challenges finding good candidates? And what are those? And put them up front. You know, I'm very big about transparency right from the beginning. We put the salary range right in the posting. We make it very clear. Anything that some candidates may not find appealing, like we have one client who owns a series of souvenir shops, and all of their employees have to work every holiday and every weekend. We make that very clear in the posting, but we also talk about that it's because we're here, you know, they're here for the public. They're here to represent the community that they're in. So they're connecting to the mission, but they're also explaining that this will be the expectation. You can't come on board and then ask for, you know, a holiday off. So you want to be very much aware of those up front so that you don't bring people on and then you have these little surprises. Maybe you didn't even think about it, but then they leave and now you're back to square one. So the best way to start on this, we typically take our clients through a whole series of questions and we drill down. But the real secret to it is just getting as specific as possible. So we have a worksheet, but you can also just do this on a piece of paper. Take a piece of paper, on one side put yes, one side put no, and start writing stories. Anytime you have an employee that just did something amazing, they really lived your core values, or if you don't know your core values yet, they really showed up in a way that you're like, this is the handbook. This is how I want everybody to show up in these type of situations every day. And you want to be documenting these stories, because this is what's going to help you to lead to all the next parts that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then on the same, the kind of other side of the coin is document those stories of those failures, or those times that you've had team members show up in a way that you wouldn't want, you didn't want them to show up, things that didn't work for you, because that's also going to help you drill in again of what you do want. And the more of these stories you start to write down, the easier it's going to be to, one, write marketing and a job posting that attracts the right person, but two, spot them in interviews, because these stories are what eventually are going to become your answer key, your scoring key for interviews, because you'll start to recognize, and we'll talk about we're going to spend quite a bit of time on interviewing. You'll start to recognize stories that the candidates share and say, hey, that matches, the way they're showing up, the way they're describing, that is exactly the behavior that I have seen in the past that I want to see more of. And so you'll know that this may be a good candidate for you. Or maybe they share a story, an example of something that you're like, that's not how I want my employees to show up. So then you know that this probably isn't the right candidate for you. So like I said, these stories are what are going to guide your marketing and your interviewing. Now, before we move on to the job posting, because I told you that we're going quickly because I want to make sure we hit all of these components. I just want to make sure I'm not losing you. You can do a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a question. Okay. So now we have all this information, right? We've drilled down, and I'm not saying you do this alone. You do it as a team. You bring other people in, you talk about what has worked in this organization. What are some good stories? So now you have all this great information, and you're going to create the job posting. And one thing I want to make clear is there's a difference between a job posting and a job description. A job description, that is your tool that you're using with your new hire and going forward of, here are my expectations. Here are the goals. I'm a big fan of result-oriented job descriptions. So it's sort of broken down, and we're not going into it, but just for basics, it's broken down into maybe 5 or 6 overall outcomes that you're looking for from the position. And then underneath each outcome are the tasks or responsibilities that contribute to that outcome. But this is the document that you'll use on a regular basis in talking about what you're expecting from them. The posting will have a little bit of that, but the job of the job posting is to attract the right candidates and weed out the poor candidates. And it's a marketing piece. I have to say that over and over again to my clients. A job posting is not the job description, it's a marketing piece. And that's how you attract the right people. If you put the job description in, it's going to be too dull to them and they probably won't read it. There was actually a recent study that showed that about, I think it was 80 or 85% of candidates don't even read a job description. They just look at the title. But if you make an irresistible job posting and you make it visual, if you have the means to do that, they are going to connect to it. And we really see that with our candidates. First part of a job posting, you want them to start saying, yes, that's me. That means we always start our job posting with a series of 4 to 5 questions. And we're very careful about what questions we ask, because we want these 4 to 5 questions to really summarize what we're looking for in a candidate. And we want the candidate to be looking at and saying, yes, that's me. Yes, that's me. Or no, that's not me. So then they move on, which saves everybody time. So, typically our first question is something very specific to the job, but a little general. So, do you live and breathe project management? So right away, this is for a job posting that we just wrote for a new client. It's a marketing company and they need a project management. And they said they want someone who really understands project management. They're going to come in with their own system. They're going to be somebody who loves to learn about it, always improving. They live and breathe it. Well, that one question helps us to just kind of punch it right from the start. And then we have a series of some other questions. The next section is you want to tell them who you are, who you truly are. What is your mission? And what do you value? And typically the we value part, those are your core values. Those, and we don't have time to get into a whole thing on core values right now. But those are the things that how you show up every day, the things that are very important to you as a company. And if I'm thinking right now about this posting I was just telling you about that we just wrote, the first one we put on there is laughter. So we usually do it as bullet points. We typically will just have it as one word or a phrase. So I think their first one we had laughter, and then you always want to have about a 2-sentence description. So how that laughter shows up each day, because you don't want to be too general in your values or in anything in there without describing, so they can really picture what it would be like to work there. The next section is who would be successful there. Now, this is a little bit more specific to the position. So the we value part, that's who's successful in the organization as a whole and how they show up. Who's successful in this position, these are the success traits. That's what we call them. And so we typically will have anywhere from, sometimes it goes up to 8, but I try to keep it around 6. And again, bullet points. The easier it is to just look through it very quickly, the more they're going to read and they're going to connect with. So this job posting that we just did, one of the bullet points was, you are an ideal candidate if you are meticulous. And then it went on for 2 sentences and described how meticulous shows up for this position in their organization. Are you guys starting to get the idea here? And then this is the section where you put some of the responsibilities, not your whole job description, but the overview. So they have an idea of what this job is going to be, what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And again, bullet points. And we usually 6 to 8 again. And if you can keep it at 6, that's even better. Now, of course, they want to know what's in it for them. Why will they even want to work with you? Why do people who currently work with you love working with you? We talked about this in the discovery section. Put it here, bullet point it. We, of course, do put what the salary range is and any kind of traditional benefits, but we also put things there like we have one client who her team members talked a lot about how she's just really, really, truly cares about them and is always looking for ways to help them grow professionally. So we put that in the posting, and I can't tell you how I think we've filled 5 jobs for her so far, and how many candidates read that and connected to it, and how that was so important to them. And when we ask them why they're passionate about the position, that's one of the things they often mention. And because this is a marketing piece, you always want to have a call to action. And typically in a job posting, you're going to have a kind of a summary thing. We usually bold it. You know, are you ready to join a marketing team that, you know, whatever is special about them? Then click apply, where, you know, we can't wait to hear from you. Something to just call them to action. Maybe it's, you don't even want them to click apply right away. Maybe you want them to read more. So, but you want to make sure they're taking the next step. So that was very quick on job postings. Are you still with me? Are you starting to see the kind of pathway that we're going through? I see one head shaking. Okay, great. So now the fun part, and this is the part where it's so interesting, and I want to put this out there, especially because this is a women's group. We work with a lot of female CEOs. I'm not sure why, but most of our clients are female CEOs. I guess we just attract them. And I'm not saying this is specific to women. I'm just saying I know this, but we often, we train them on how to interview, and we give them the interview questions. And then I can't tell you how often the day before, the morning of, they call me and say, I'm so nervous. And I mean, and sometimes these are CEOs who've had their company 10, 15 years, they've hired so many people, but they come to us because they're at a point where they want to do it right. And now I guess that added pressure of we've kind of taught them how to do it correctly. So they're like, I really want to make sure I don't make a mistake. And so, you know, I always just say, you know, nobody's perfect. I make mistakes still with interviewing as well. You just follow the formula. And in most cases, you're going to get great results. But in the end, people are people. And the other thing I always say is, remember, you're the leader. You know, I say to them, I see you leading an amazing organization that you built from scratch. And then, because we have them record their interviews, it's amazing seeing these CEOs who, you know, usually just, they step into the room and you know there's a leader. And then you see them interviewing and it's like they're a different person. They forget there's a leader and they're kind of almost insecure. So I tell them, bring that confidence from that you have in leading the meeting to the interview. I mean, you still want to be nice and friendly and respectful, but you know, you're leading this interview. And I think that's one of the most important things to share, and making sure that the candidate does at least 85% of the talking. I can't tell you how many people just think they need to do a lot of the talking and then the candidate leaves and they don't have enough information to make a decision. Okay, so are you ready to go through conducting effective interviews? Great. So first thing, you want to have good questions. So we're going to go over the structure of how to create a great question. The first part, could you share? Almost all of our interview questions start with, could you share, or could you tell us, or could you something? The reason we start with could you, and if you think back, a lot of traditional interview questions started with give us or tell us, very directive statements. And what happens is when you give directive statements, it makes the candidate feel like they have to put their defenses up. And so they will, and you might not get honesty from them because they feel like they have to give you whatever that right answer is. So you want them to think that they have some sort of control over the situation on whether or not they're going to answer. You want them to think that you're the friend, that you're just having a nice casual conversation with them. So we always start with, could you share? Then we use our power words. And whatever you do, write this phrase down. If it's the only thing you leave here with, leave with specific example. Almost all of your interview questions, you should be asking for a specific example. And if the candidate does not give you a specific example, you want to then say, I usually will say something like, well, thank you for sharing that. Could you think back and share a specific example of, and whatever the situation is, because the more details you get from them on how they showed up in the past, the better idea you'll have of how they'll show up in the future. And people have a very difficult time embellishing or lying in details. So often we hear, I interviewed that person, they said all the right things. And then we go back and we might be able to watch the interview if they recorded it, or we talk about what they actually said. And it was all very general. Yeah, they said all the right things that they probably took off of the internet, or they heard other people telling them they should be saying, but they didn't really say what they have done in the past. And that's what you want to know. And you want to see if there's a pattern. So you're asking for, could you share a specific example of? Then you want to take it back to your list of success traits and your list of core values. We usually focus a lot on success traits here. And so, for example, here's one where maybe you're looking for somebody who really takes ownership every day. And you want to try to relate it. If you can relate it to what things that actually happen in your business or organization, then you'll want to use that as the example. So here, the question is, could you share a specific example of a time at work where it wasn't clear who was responsible for a certain task? So what happens here is you're asking them to think of a time when that happened, and you're going to listen for, well, do they complain about it? Yeah, I just can't, that's why I left my last job, because nobody really knew who was responsible for what. Or do they talk about taking leadership and stepping in when there's a gap? And sometimes you will need to probe a little, but and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the one thing you want to make sure you don't do is say things like, and how did you handle it? Or how did you resolve it? Because that is giving away the answer. And we all do it. Sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. And now I've done it so many, I've interviewed so many times that I don't do it as often. But even sometimes if I'm watching one of my team members and they start to do it, they're like, oops. It's very important that you leave it hanging, because the problem makers, like I said, are going to complain. The problem solvers are going to tell you how they stepped up and solved it. But if you say, and how did you handle it? Or how did you resolve it? Or anything like that, even the problem makers are going to hear that cue and come up with some way they solved it, and know that that's what you want to hear. Does that make sense? Okay. Here's another example. We often want people who love to learn. Could you share a specific example of a time at work when you were asked to do something you didn't know how to do? Again, the problem makers are probably going to complain, or they might just talk in generalities. The problem solvers are going to talk about, hopefully, that ways they had been resourceful. They looked up YouTube videos, whatever it was, to learn what they needed to learn, and how they implemented that. Emotional intelligence is another one we hear a lot from our clients that they want to see. Here's an example. Could you share a specific example of a time at work when a customer became emotional or upset with you? Again, if you start using questions like this, you will see how it works. It takes a lot of practice, and you'll start to see a pattern. And it's really interesting as you listen to it and as you see the difference, and as you learn to listen for those specific details and not just those catchphrases of, we always make sure that we go above and beyond. People love to say, oh, I'm great at customer service, I always go above and beyond. great. Can you share a specific example of you doing that? And then listen to what their example is. Maybe that you didn't think it was above and beyond. Because again, whether they're lying or not, they may have a different definition of what above and beyond looks like than you. So the more examples you get from them, the more you'll know what they truly believe and how they truly act. I mentioned probing for details, not giving away the answers, but you need to really learn the details. So walk me through what happened next. How did you learn about the situation? I love saying, what does that look like to you? Because often a candidate will say something and I'll assume they mean one thing. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So don't be afraid to ask for clarification, just to make sure you're not making assumptions and thinking they're saying what you want them to say, or even that they're saying something you don't want them to say. Okay, so here's where we start to get into, well, what's a good response and what might not be a good response? Don't be swayed by hypotheticals. And we're going to go into what each one of these means. The next one is listen for context, actions, results, and know what great looks like. So hypotheticals. High performers will typically answer in, I did this. You want to listen for how they specifically showed up. Now, low performers will often say, well, you should do something, or we did this. Now, the only caveat with we is we're often taught in the workplace about team and to not use I and instead use we. So I always, if I'm hearing a lot of we, and I just want to make sure, that they're saying we because they didn't have an actual role, I'll give them permission to say I. I will always say, I think it's great you're using we because everybody contributes. I do just want to, tell you that this is an interview and I want to hear how you specifically showed up. So if you could share with me the specific actions that you took, what was your role in the situation? And if you're still hearing we, then, you've already told them, you've already given them permission to say I, so I would move on. You want to listen for car. The first letter is C in car, and that's context. You really want to know what the situation is. How did the problem start? How did they learn about it? Just get a feel for what was going on with this example that they're sharing to you. The next one, of course, are the actions. What are the specific actions that the candidate took in the situation? And R is for results. What was the outcome? What happened next? And again, don't say, was it resolved? But just, what happened next? What was the outcome? And sometimes they'll tell you they failed. As long as they followed that up with, I failed. I learned that I need to approach things in a different way. And this is what I'm doing. This is what I learned from the situation. Then that is probably a good response. But if they just leave it at, and so many times you're going to want to help the candidate. You're going to want to dig them out. You're going to want to say, what happened? How did it get resolved? Did it, you're going to want to be their cheerleader. Don't. Not that you're putting them down, but the only way you're going to learn if they're the right fit for you is if you do give them the opportunity to fail. And they won't even know that they failed. So you're still being nice. And of course, know what great looks like. Do they have control over the outcome? A lot of times, people do not feel like they have control in a situation, whatever it is. I'm not talking about control in the interview. I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure you know some people sometimes at work who may feel like the whole world is against them, or they just don't have a way to contribute to a positive outcome. So they don't feel like they have a locus of control. So you do want to also be listening for that in the answers of, are they blaming everybody else, or are they taking some responsibility for the outcome? You know, what are the specific behaviors you want to see in this person doing this job? And we talked about that earlier with the discovery. And most important, listen for patterns. So I always say, if you're going to take notes during the interview, which I do recommend, do not take judgmental notes. And I always tell the candidate, I'm going to be taking notes, but all I'm doing is writing down exactly what you say so that I don't forget. I would not make any kind of evaluative or judgment notes or even thoughts during the interview, because they may not, answer one question not so great, but then 85% of the rest that, they kick it out of the park. Nobody's going to be 100%. So you want to look at the patterns of how they answer. And it's easier to do that if you take some good notes during it, so you don't forget the specific details they share with you. We actually now use transcription software, which helps a lot when you're on Zoom, of course. But if you start to make judgmental notes early on, it's going to just taint your what you're seeing and hearing for the rest of the interview. So I added some actual examples of one of the searches that we did a while ago. It was actually for a bridal shop. I thought it was, kind of a good position that maybe everybody could relate to a little bit. And I want to see what you think of the responses. So this was with the question, could you share with me, and guys are going to have to unmute in a second. Could you share with me the most difficult customer you had to work with? And the response was, we had an automatic monthly, and the notes might be a little choppy, but we had this person was selling automatic monthly packages at her previous job. You could freeze them for a small amount. A customer came in and was upset because she thought she had frozen her account. I talked her through it. I had my manager be up there with me. We ended up helping her by using that money to get her a lotion instead of refunding it. I made sure she knew I was handling it and not getting upset. So who wants to comment on that response?
I would say she took control. She tried to show her caring and of course not being upset with her, but just working through it and coming to a resolve that made everybody happy, and so that she continue having that customer.
Yeah, they ended up hiring this person, and this was a year and a half ago. She's still there, and they love her. Does anybody else notice anything with this response?
The whole I and we, so she showed that what she specifically did, but still showed the we, teamwork, that whole thing.
Yeah, good point. And anything else pop out? Anything of concern?
Depending on her position, whether she had to call up her manager to help or not, depending on how much authority she had, I guess. But,
And that's an excellent point. That's what I was looking for, Roz. So I did this interview, and when she did mention about calling her manager up, I did probe and just ask what was the reason you asked your manager to come up. And she said, I don't have it in there, but she said, well, because I wanted to see if I could do something creative, and so that we didn't have to refund, and see if I could sell her something else, and I needed my manager's permission for that. So I just wanted her to be there to approve it if the client was happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I leave that part out when I include this in the workshop, because I want to see if anybody notices that. So that was a good catch. Okay, so here's the next one. Same question, different candidate, also a real answer. It happens all the time. Customers come in asking for something we can't deliver. I make sure they speak to my manager if I can't help them. We always make sure we go above and beyond. Thoughts? Would you hire this person?
Not directly with that answer. I mean, not specific, that's for sure. And apparently expects it to happen all the time, maybe.
Yeah, that throws you a little. Yeah, she tried to use, that phrase, going above and beyond. And I'll tell you, you hear it enough times. Sometimes when you're interviewing, you think, oh, they're going to go above and beyond. Great, because you're so desperate to fill the position, and you're just taking what they're saying at face value. So you really, I can't remember if I probed on this one or not, but I might have said, great, could you share a specific example of, I want you to think of an actual customer that was really difficult and just walk me through what happened. And my guess is if I did say that, this candidate probably couldn't come up with a specific example, or at least one that she wanted to share. So I don't even know where I am on time, to be honest, but we went through very quickly, discovering who you need, creating an irresistible job posting, conducting effective interviews, and scoring or evaluating candidate responses. And one quote from Simon Sinek that I keep on my wall near my desk, and which I think ties all of this together, is if you hire people just because they can do the job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they'll work for you with blood, sweat, and tears. And I truly see that over and over again. And I think if you go through the steps that I just described and really connect with your mission and connect your team and your potential team with that, you'll have people who really show up for you and do a great job. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. We'll go back to the gallery view for this. Let's stop your share there.
Oh, okay. And I also just wanted to say, if you email me, I'm happy to send you some free downloads, especially the ones that I'd recommend, that I'd love to send you, are the question sheets to really start that discovery exercise. So that's my email. I can put it in the chat too.
Yeah, do that.
Perfect. Okay, yes, I see. Susan, you have a question.
Yeah, it's more something that you said than a question. I think the piece that you mentioned with values is so important, because if where you're working isn't going to be in alignment with who you are, you're not going to be happy, and then you're not going to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's all in alignment, it's like then it matters to the person. Yeah. So
yeah. And I believe it doesn't matter what the position is.
Right.
It could be somebody who cleans the hallways, or it could be the CEO or the vice president. It's everybody lives by the same values and believes in what the company or the organization is all about.
Andrea, so you as a company, what do you do? Do you interview people first and then match make, or do you just work both ways where you teach them how to interview?
No, we all of our clients are employers. Now we're very different than a normal recruitment firm. We don't charge placement fees. We're subscription based, and a lot of what we do is helping the company to kind of drill in on their core values, even if they already have them. We create the job posting, recruitment marketing. We help with that employer branding piece, and also help the company get a feel for who they're truly looking for. And then we go out and do the full cycle recruiting. And we write the interview scripts. We do the phone interviews, depending upon which, we have different levels subscriptions. And we teach our clients how to interview and what to listen for. And some of them also want help with onboarding as well. So we don't have candidates. It's kind of like we're one of the things that we want to do this year. I just hired a full-time marketing person, is create more resources for our candidates. We don't have any plans right now to charge them for anything, but we do want to have more resources available to them so they can show up successfully. Did that answer your question?
Any other questions?
I just want to comment that I'm part of the interviewing process when we hire someone here. And this has been an awesome presentation. And I want to thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
I was thinking the same, or everybody that's interviewed on this call, I was going back and saying, oh, shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have done that.
Exactly.
It was good pointers on how
Should have listened for that.
Right. Should have followed up on that, rephrased that question.
One thing I just want to say quickly that I had heard that stands out and kind of relates to the whole package here is that a quote that the way you do anything, the way you do anything is how you do everything, and so that's what you're trying to drill down into really finding out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just finding out, how they show up on a daily basis, what they're like,
actions and characteristics. Yeah, it's great stuff.
I'm gonna put my email in the chat so
that somebody was just asking for that.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're getting right to that 9:30 hour, so thank you for the presentation. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you on some future Zooms, and enjoy your Friday. Have a great weekend. Take care, everybody.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye.